Hi everybody and welcome to this week's Russell 2000 market commentary. You're speaking with Nick McDonald of Trade with Precision, and here we're looking at the TF contract, the Russell 2000 futures contract listed on ICE. Last week we identified two levels of support and resistance on this chart. We identified an intraday level here at 710 where price had been hitting up against it and decided that this looked bullish and likely to break through. It's done exactly that. What we also identified was on a weekly chart that we have this upper level, and it's kind of a zone between 740 and 750, these two upper lines I've got on the chart, whereby price has been supported and resisted here many times in the past, and this is the key level, a very precise level, whereby we're now testing the lower part of that, the 740 area, and this is likely to act as resistance. And then the question for this week becomes, okay, we've had a pretty decent week last week, are we likely to continue and break up through that area, or are we likely to pull back? What we see from the daily and weekly is that no matter what happens, a pullback is not a big deal. Pullbacks are likely after big moves, and any good healthy trend has pullbacks within it. But let's go and have a quick look at some of the other cash markets and decide what they are doing and look at which index markets are maybe leading and which ones are lagging, and then we'll come back and tie this together as to where the Russell might go. So let's have a quick look at the Dow. The Dow has actually broken up through weekly resistance. So if we look at it on the daily chart, it had a really big up day last week here. If we just come out and have a look at where the weekly resistance was, we had identified this lower point here around about 11,200 as being resistance on the weekly chart. We've broken up through that, and now we've got some legs left. We've got some legs really up to this next upper resistance point. As long as the markets remain in that kind of right now, there's no reason to really say that this should turn around. So I'm always looking to identify where is the next point where it's going to be tested, where is there going to be some sellers stepping back in, and that point is up around about 11,600 or just a little bit above that on the Dow. So we've got a good few hundred points in that. I think the Dow's got some legs to come up and at least test that level at the very least. Let's have a look at the S&P. And on the S&P contract, what we've got again is that we've ever so slightly broken this weekly resistance. So this was quite a precise zone. You can see some very precise touches, including the most recent touch on this line. And if we zoom right in, you'll see we just managed to close above that level. That is a good bullish sign. However, always just remaining that little bit cautious after such a big up week. So we had a big up week, and we're due a little bit of a retracement. We will always get retracements in trends, and therefore this, hopefully does push on through. I'm still remaining bullish, but I also won't be put off if we get a little bit of a retracement, because a retracement is healthy after that, these big moves up where prices got overextended away from the averages. That's my main measure of overextended, the size of the candles, and these candles have got quite big, and also the distance from the moving averages. So again, a pullback here would be healthy rather than any kind of a problem. Let's lastly have a look at the Nasdaq before coming back and looking at the Russell. This is really the market leader as far as index markets go, really smashing through all levels of resistance. This is a weekly chart now. We've broken right up through what was major resistance here, really pushed right through it, and I'm not too worried about these levels here. Why? Because they're just one touch. Excuse me. Here they are just one touch, and price has broken up through where there's been major resistance and multiple touches, multiple buyers and sellers at those levels, and now this level up at the high here, it is a high, but it's very, very minor support and resistance. This is just looking like pushing on and continuing. It has got very overextended as well, like some of the others have, in fact even more so, but it's just showing so much strength right now, and any pullback will be healthy. But you can even see that on a shorter term basis, this daily chart has been having pullbacks into the 10 and 20 period moving average zone, and another one of those pullbacks is quite likely this week as we continue on in the uptrend. Let's come back and look at the Russell and then have a look at what is likely to happen at this resistance area. Considering that we are just testing this resistance level, first we'll have a look at the monthly here, and the monthly looks very, very bullish in terms of it's just starting to come up and really put in significant higher lows now, and if we can break through the 740 to 750 zone, it will be very significant, because it will have made higher highs and it will have no major resistance until up around about 840 to 850. So we've got a very good sizable run if we can just get up through this level. And what do we look at? Why do we look at the other markets? Because we want to look at their daily, weekly and monthly levels, and particularly those higher time frame weekly and monthly areas. And you'll see that the Russell is the only one that hasn't yet broken up through those resistance points on the weekly chart, and the Russell is just testing that now. But it's a good leading indication that the other three markets have. They've already broken through, some considerably, some just breaking through at the end of last week, but here the Russell is still just below, just testing just coming up against resistance. It's a good sign that the others are breaking through. So I believe that this will break through. However, will it break through immediately, or will it retrace first? That's yet to be seen. We'll see where the market action comes this week. I do believe that we'll break through. Even if it doesn't happen this week, I'll continue that stance into next week. But because, in a very similar situation to the others, because we've had a big week, and look at this daily chart and the weekly chart, we've got some big candles, we've moved away from the averages, a retracement is looking quite likely, or is looking very possible. If we just come and just have a quick look at a 4-hour chart here, you'll just see that just how nice a trend this is. So putting the trend into perspective, when we broke away and we broke up out of this range that it was in at 710, so here was as we broke through 710, we broke up, we pulled back in, and we rejected that level again. Such a bullish sign. We continued up, and we've had little pullbacks into these averages, into the buy zone, and we're continuing on up. See how the averages are pushing up here, making higher highs as price makes higher highs? Sorry, the indicators, the RSI and the MACD, pushing up and making higher highs as price does. It's a really good, strong, bullish sign. And any pullback here may just be a small pullback on the 4-hour chart, or it might be a slightly bigger pullback into the daily and weekly moving averages. Nonetheless, I believe that upper level will get broken. Maybe this week, maybe next week, but I'm looking for that level to be broken, and looking for a big test up towards the 850 level, and to come up and really test these highs that we put in back in 2007 and 2008. Not looking for that to happen this week, of course. That's a bigger picture outlook for the next couple of weeks. This week I remain very bullish, while being cautious in terms of expecting that this could have a little bit of a pullback. What that means is that I wouldn't be a buyer up at these highs. I'm gladly a buyer back in around moving averages and looking for reasons to buy back there. I was already a buyer back here around 710 as we broke up through that level. What I don't want to do, though, is to be buying at extremes. I don't want to be chasing the market. I don't want to be buying just ahead of resistance. But I'm quite happy to see a little bit of a sell-off from that level, and then look to be a buyer again as we continue up, retest that level, and the probability is for a break through that level. Happy trading all. Have a great week. Speak to you next Monday.